Today we have a special segment on the show. I reached out recently to the team at Lethal Chicken Games, the creators of What the Film, and heard back from Alex, one of the co-creators of said game, and they will be joining us for an episode of the podcast.
What the really?
Yay!
Holy that's so cool!
Yay! Surprise!
So we'll be interviewing Mike and Alex from Lethal Chicken Games, and today.
Today?
Well, I mean, today at the time that this episode is releasing, we will be interviewing Mike and Alex at Lethal Chicken Games.
Yes, today.
Yes.
That's super dope. That's
really
cool. Cool, I'm excited.
Hello and welcome to a new episode of New Script on the Block. We have a very, very special guest for this week's episode. We are joined by Alex from Lethal Chicken to talk a bit about his game, What the Film, and also just trying to get a couple of questions answered that we kind of filtered through in his experience with films and game making and all that other stuff, and I don't know what else to say, so let's get started.
Hello everyone, thanks for having me on. This is exciting.
Awesome. So let's see, where does the name Lethal Chicken come from?
So Lethal Chicken was a name that I've kind of sat on for a long time, and what happened was, many years ago, I wanted to open a haunted house, and I always thought a funny name for a haunted house would be the Lethal Chicken. So I bought the domain, probably 15 years ago, and I just kind of been sitting on it and never really did anything with it. And then when Mike and I started our game company, he wanted to call it Hip Hippo Games. And I was like, oh, that's cool, that works. And so we had a logo made of Hip Hippo, and we didn't like it. And then I said, well, another option. I said, I own this domain that I've never done anything with, called Lethal Chicken. We could call it Lethal Chicken Games. That could be kind of funny. And he was like, oh, that's awesome. And so then we were kind of torn. We liked both names, and so we said, you know what, let's get a logo made for each one, and whichever one we like better, that's what we go with. And the design that came back for our Lethal Chicken was so funny. And it was something that we had never expected. That we're just like, okay, that's it. Like, that was a no-brainer. So,
Nice.
So that's kind of where it ended up going. So that's how Lethal Chicken came about.
Cool.
Well, as a connoisseur of chicken, I love your name.
Hero's favorite food is fried chicken, so it's very appropriate.
That's perfect.
And then, I guess just, do you have a brief overview of kind of how Lethal Chicken Games became, a brand? You mentioned Mike. What was kind of your first steps of the whole thing?
So it's kind of a crazy story. Mike and I used to live in California, and I moved to Florida. Actually, I was going to start a racetrack, and it didn't materialize, and I was just kind of trying to figure out what my next steps were going to be, and then Hurricane Irma hit. And we were fine in our area, but, devastated Fort Myers. So Mike was my neighbor. We didn't really know each other that well. We lived down the street from each other, and we went to church together. And, so we would see each other, like, on Sundays and stuff like that. And we went down to go volunteer and help in Fort Myers with the cleanup. Mm-hmm. And while we were down there, we ended up working together, and then ended up sharing a tent overnight. We were just camping out. We were just hanging out in the tent, and just started chatting, and we're both night people, so I don't know. I think we just chit-chatted from about 6 p.m. to probably 3 a.m. when we finally fell asleep. And during that time, I was into movies. I had written a script that I hadn't really done anything with yet, but had finished not too long ago. And so we were talking about that, and he was just like, oh, we could turn that into a game. And he was super big into games. And I was like, really? And he was like, yeah. And so then we just started brainstorming game ideas. Now, my extent of being in the whole game world was Candyland and Monopoly. That was kind of it. I never really had delved into all of these other games. And so we started talking about developing this game, and that's where What the Film came from. And we literally developed What the Film kind of overnight. By the time we went to bed, or by the time by early morning, we pretty much had it fleshed out relatively well. We didn't have a name yet, but we had it fleshed out. Once we got back to Orlando, we're like, let's keep going on developing this. I think there's something here. And so we started meeting, and then it just kind of evolved from there into hey, this is working. Let's get it on Kickstarter, and let's form a company. And so that's what we did.
All right, so just segueing now into some of the filmmaker type questions. So from my understanding, you had a film that's been out there, right? It's called One Too Many Mornings. Is that correct?
That's correct. So my background is actually kind of more on the production and the film side of things, more so obviously than games. I started back in 2003, 2004. I was, I think a lot of people started as kind of a side gig, and I do free projects and things like that. And I ended up kind of getting involved in LA Fashion Week and New York Fashion Week, and I shot those. And but one of the people that I did this thing. It was supposed to be, I answered a Craigslist, which is always the start of a very bad story. And I answered this post on Craigslist, and they were looking for a photographer, and I think a photographer and a videographer. And I was doing video at the time, and they're like, oh, this is a Comedy Central pilot, and blah blah blah. So I applied to this gig, and I didn't get it for the video part, but they're like, can you shoot photos? And the real answer was no, but I was like, of course, yeah, it's all the same. And they're like, come be our on-set photographer. I'm like, all right, cool. So I go and this shoot, and it was, I won't get into the details, but it definitely wasn't porn, but there were puppets, and it was super inappropriate, and just not something that I really wanted to be involved with.
Wait, did
and
you
I was
say
just like,
puppets?
oh my gosh. Yeah, there were puppets.
Ah.
Yeah, it's super weird. Anyway, it definitely was not Comedy Central. And I felt like I kind of been duped into this super weird shoot at some dude's house, and it was just
Oh no.
it was the whole thing was just super bizarre. But
I know
two of the
those.
people that were it did teach me a valuable lesson to always ask for what the content is, and always get a script before you go accept a project, basically. But two of the people that were on this project were Stephen Hale and Anthony Deptula, and they had been good friends for a long time. They were on this project, and they were actually the actors in the project. And we all were just kind of like, what are we doing? This is crazy. And so we exchanged info, and we're just like, they were like, hey, we're working on a film short. Do you want to be involved? I'm like, yeah, sure. What is it? What's the content? And so anyway, we ended up talking afterwards. I know, right? We ended up talking afterwards, and it ended up being this film short called La Dentista, and it was Anthony, Mike, and Mike Mohan, who was the director, and then Stephen Hale. And it was the three of them, and they'd kind of grown up together and worked on these projects together, and they brought me in. They're like, you can come in and, be a producer and, help us just do stuff on it and shoot behind the scenes and all that. So that's kind of what I did. I ended up getting them, I hooked them up with a mariachi band that I had worked with in the past, and, so they're in it. And anyway, we produced this film short called La Dentista, and then that led to doing kind of another film short. And then when they were working on the One Too Many Mornings, and they had shot some stuff, and they had a trailer cut together, and they came to me and they're like, hey, do you want to get involved in this project? We need behind the scenes. We need some, we need someone to help us find some more funding and stuff like that. So that's what I did. So I jumped in. I watched their, some of the footage that they had shot, and it was great. It was really well done, and beautiful black and white film. and it's funny, just like heartwarming and funny. And so I joined the team, and I found them additional financing that they needed, and which kind of cemented my place as co-producer on the film. And then I ended up doing all the behind the scenes as well. And so we shot it nights and weekends over the course of a couple of years, basically, and just slowly but surely kind of put this film together. So Mike Mohan actually he actually worked for Sundance initially, which I know sounds super kind of like nepotism almost, that we got our movie in Sundance and he used to work there. How ironic. But what happened, it actually was not like that at all. He worked there, and he was also taking this film, One Too Many Mornings, through a workshop, like the director's workshop that they have. And you submit your script, and you submit your finished pieces and your, different elements of your film, and then they'll give you feedback on it, and ultimately you submit kind of like, what you feel is a good final, and then they'll give you kind of like, this is what you need to do to fix it, and this could make it into Sundance, or this wouldn't make it into Sundance. So ours was, this wouldn't make it into Sundance. You kind of need to redo the beginning. And we had been wrapped up for about 9 months, and it was basically kind of redo the entire beginning, like the first.
Oh no.
But it's, I don't know, the first maybe 12 minutes of the movie, which is a fair amount, like that's a decent amount. We just reshot it, and took their recommendations and did what they suggested. But then Mike actually had a pretty tough choice, because you can't work for Sundance and have your movie in it, and it has to be a year. Like, you can't just be like, oh, I'm going to quit and I'm going to submit my movie next week. No, it has to be a year. So, so he quit with that in mind. Like, okay, I'm going to quit, and I'm not going to work at Sundance, and I'm going to hope that that the movie gets in, or that it does something, that something good develops from it. And so then there was actually a change in director. So while he was there, it was a guy named Jeff Gilmore, and Jeff left in 2009, and John Cooper came in 2009 as the director of Sundance. I think John knew Mike. I mean, he knew who he was. He'd gone through the program, and John had been there. So we watched the film, and by the time he was done, he was just like, "This is great," and so we got in. So that was very exciting. We found out. I found out, I think, on Thanksgiving Day. I think it was. It was either the day of or the day before. And oh my goodness, when I got the call, I was so excited. It was so crazy. I was just like, we were all just elated. It was phenomenal. And we weren't finished with the movie even. We had submitted a rough cut, and I definitely was not done with the behind the scenes. And so that just kind of like ramped up our timeline to get everything done. And this was in end of 2009, and so then it was the 2010 Film Festival that our film was in there. And so we had to get it finished because it was DVDs at the time. That was the big thing, was having it on DVD. And you didn't really do the digital distribution. And so it was a rush to get all of the behind the scenes stuff done, and Mike was rushing to get the film done, to finish getting it edited and the final output. And so we ended up really kind of like working heavily over the holidays to just get everything wrapped up, and get all the elements done so that we could get it submitted for have the DVDs replicated and all of that stuff. So that's our story of getting it into Sundance. So I've got more stories about distribution if you care about that, but yeah.
I mean, we definitely do, for sure. But you definitely knocked out a couple of the questions that we had for you, for sure.
Okay, sorry,
Can you tell, real quick, could you, tell me what it was like? Because you were able to, go to the festival itself, right, and see it premiere there?
I did, yes. So I did go to the festival. I think most of us were there, did make it out there. And, it was so exciting. It was so cool to see your poster. I think that was the first time I'd actually seen the poster, and then to see my name on the poster, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm on the poster. That's amazing. That was just like, I was so happy. And then just walking into the lobby and everyone's there, and being able to go to a film festival. When I had been a volunteer at like the LA Film Fest a few years prior, and so I had been in the festival circuit as an attendee a number of times, but then to all of a sudden go as like someone that has a film in the festival it truly was remarkable. Like it was that moment where you're just like, lifelong dream / goal, check, done.
Yeah,
Moving
sense
on.
of pride, huh?
Yeah, truly.
Nice. And to because then it got showed and you were able to sit in the audience with everyone else who hasn't seen the film yet. How was that feeling? Did you feel nervous?
I was a little bit nervous, but I don't think I had nearly as much riding on it as Mike and the actors, where their performances are being judged.
That's true.
I think mine I was more nervous for the DVD going out because I created all the behind the scenes for the DVD and like pretty much all the special features, and there's like this documentary on there that I created about so the movie's about a guy that lives in a church. Stephen lives in a church, and it's based on Stephen, who actually lived in a church, and so he shot it at the church that he lived in, and his job was just to turn off the lights every night. That was kind of like just turn off the lights, make sure everything's locked up, and he lived there, and he got free rent for living there, and so that's kind of what the movie's
nice.
about, and it plays off of that, that kind of funny storyline, and just turning off 50 lights every night, and going through all of the rooms. But then there's a lot of other elements to it that are, then some are true-ish and some are just fictional and fun, and it's just a fun black and white little feature film. So I don't know. I hope that answered it.
Oh yeah, no, just how you felt like just being able to be in an auditorium or a movie theater where things were being played and you were there. But I understand, like, there's that feeling. It was like, well, I did my job,
Right.
So you don't
Right.
you can relax when you're at the showing.
You can enjoy the film.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
But when the
but
DVDs come out, though.
Yes, I was hoping that we would, get a deal. So there was that kind of like nervous element of just like, hopefully we're gonna get a deal, and our movie sells, and we hit the right people see it, that sort of thing. So
I think this will be one of my questions to segue back into to the game. That is, do you feel that your filmmaking experience influenced how you designed the film?
Oh, for sure. Oh my goodness, yes, definitely. Being kind of in the film industry absolutely had a huge influence on the design of the film. So anyone that works in the film industry, when you play the game, so the game, I'll give you kind of like a brief overview. It's a party game where you combine 3 different elements to create a funny movie. So you have actor cards, plot cards, and set cards. And you combine one of each, and then you pitch your movie to the table, and everyone pitches, and then you vote for your favorite one, except you can't vote for your own. And so you might have like a cop that's allergic. I'm just reading the back of the box here, actually. A cop that's allergic to donuts discovers that he has superhero powers, and he's trying to control it, and he's in a medieval castle. So you would take those 3 elements, and you would just kind of pitch your movie. And you can elaborate on it. You can give it a title. It really wouldn't be much more than reading the cards. And the cards are written so that it can be done that way if you want. And that way, introverts can play it, or extroverts can go to town with it. But regardless, you have 36 seconds to tell your story, and and then the timer runs out. So that's kind of a quick overview of the game. Now, because I had worked in the film industry, I was able to kind of write in a lot of things that maybe were, like a little more on the technical side. I think they're kind of like Easter eggs in a sense. You know, like there's a reference to Alan Smythe in there, which, you know, most people probably wouldn't get, but, you know, those that are in the film industry would know what that, you know who Alan Smythe is, or
Right.
not, actually.
Who is that person? Go ahead and, for our listeners, and definitely not just for me, can you tell me who that is?
Yes, so Alan Smythe is a fictional person that anytime you have a movie that you do not want your name on, then you put, like, directed by Alan Smythe. So if you see a film that's been directed by Alan Smythe, it's someone that they didn't want their name on.
Doesn't
the film,
want to take
and the film's
credit for
probably
it.
So it's like a little alias, like an anonymous.
Exactly.
Ah.
Yeah, but that's the one that everyone uses. So it's become, you know, they don't put a fictitious name on it. Like, it's always Alan Smythe.
Oh my gosh, I'm gonna look that up later. I'm gonna find all the films. Like, wait a minute. Nice.
This podcast is brought to you by Arizona Studios. Arizona Studios, a full-service video content specialist. We're here to illuminate your message and compel your audience to take the right action. For more information, head to our website at arizonastudios.com and be sure to tune in for more content on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube.
There's a couple other elements that I didn't explain on the game. Like, one is if you don't have enough cards, they go back, or when you're done with your cards, they get discarded. If you don't have any actors, then you have to go into the discard pile and dig out an actor. Which, you know, like, that doesn't sound like that big of a deal. But what it does is it brings back all of these failed stories. And so you're having these recycled plots, these recycled characters. And so it starts lending itself to these sequels. And,
Oh, nice.
You know, and so it actually gets really funny. Like, it's a funny, and I have to admit, it was kind of a happy accident that happened. Like, you know, we were trying to solve a problem of, you know, what do you do if someone doesn't get a plot or a set? And, you know, so that was our solution. And then as we were, like, testing the game, and we saw that, you know, these movies were being turned into sequels because these characters or places or sets or plots were being used again and again, we're like, oh, that's funny. Like,
Let's
really
reboot
good.
it.
Yeah. So there's been some funny ones. We had one with a dyslexic accountant that kept reappearing, and it was, you know, in the original movie, someone had said it was played by The Rock, and, you know, it just got funnier and just more obnoxious as the night went on. It was pretty funny.
Oh man, I can totally see The Rock playing a dyslexic. What was it? Librarian.
A dyslexic
something?
Accountant.
Accountant. There you go. Yeah, I could totally see him being that.
That's definitely the magic with, like, games that are, like, very open-ended and can, like it makes you be the person to, like, take creative liberties, you know, with the foundations from the cards. I like that.
Exactly.
What's Ash? What was a game that's like that you guys have super fights or something?
Yeah, super fights. That's how we play.
And then I think I haven't played it, but I've heard we get compared to Cards Against Humanity a lot too.
Yeah.
The voting elements as well.
That's what super fights is too. Like, they're a lot of the same type of conversation kind of things of you have to kind of explain and you know, make yours out to be the better of everyone else. So, but the fact that yours is very, like, film based, it's perfect for us because, I mean, we could just keep going on and on and on and playing this forever. So, so what was the process, or, like, so I know you have more than just What the Film game. So what is the process when you're going into, like, you have an idea, you're going to get ready to start building this game. How does it start? What is the full process of it?
So what we did is, you know, we had the idea for the game, and you know, I'm a bit of an entrepreneur, but one of my businesses is an after-school arts program teaching kids sculpting and drawing. So I had really good access to a bunch of artists. So I contacted one of my artists, and I was like, hey, we're thinking of doing this game. Do you want to draw a bunch of, pictures for it? And she was like, yeah, sure. So that was kind of our start. We had a gal named Kathleen Abelos was our artist for What the Film. And so we started her on developing artwork for each of the cards. And so we have 400, the game has 400 cards. 200 of them are text, and then 200 of them have artwork on them. So, for being a party game, like, it's a very nicely developed party game, which, I was new to the game industry, so this was all new to me. I didn't realize you could just do words on a card. I thought that was boring anyways. And, now as I kind of look out at, like, other games, other party games, I'm like, oh, they're all, like, words on a card. But, that's fine. I like our game because it's beautiful. And so we started with an artist, and then Mike and I sat down and we just brainstormed and just developed the, just write. And we just write the different cards, and we just come up with crazy plots and crazy characters and just put everything into a spreadsheet. And then from there I started throwing out, like, I love graphic design, so I started kind of creating the design of it. And I looked at a bunch of other games, and what were they using? Like, all of them had this, like, orange to yellow fade, or like, and then blue, orange, yellow, orange, blue. Like, those were the main colors of so many games. So I was like, okay, well, that must be what people do. You make a orange to yellow fade and put it on a blue background. And so I created it, and that was actually our first design. And Mike's like, this looks like a game out of the 90s. He's like, give it another pass. I don't think this is it. So I'm like, okay. So I was like, okay, I think I did a different one, and then I did one where it was just kind of real off the cuff, and I was just like, let's just do something super plain and just black and white, stark white, super simple letters. And I think I spent maybe 15 minutes on kind of banging out the design, and I was like, what do you think of this? And he was like, that's it. I'm like, really? He's like, yep, that's it. I'm like, okay, there we go. And so that's where the packaging came from. And then once that's done, then we put it on Kickstarter. And about the time that we had put it on Kickstarter, I was like, let's speed up the process of Kickstarter. Like, let's try and get this into production as far as we can before Kickstarter even finishes. So that's what we did. So we put as much of our resources as we could into it to get What the Film into production. And so by the time Kickstarter was going, I think our run was pretty much done and on its way to America, or very close to it. And so then while it was on Kickstarter, so we funded in a couple days, 3 or 4 days. And
that's pretty good.
yeah, so we were happy about that, and then we were about 2 weeks into, it wasn't even that. I think we're about a week into our campaign. We went to this convention of board game developers, and while we'd kind of been waiting for the artwork to come in from Kathleen, we developed Camping with Sasquatch, which is our second game. And so during that time, so while What the Film was on Kickstarter, we went to this game developers little conference in Orlando, and to just kind of like help us finish developing Camping with Sasquatch. We had it pretty much done. We had it playable, and we went there and we just played with a bunch of game designers, and they're like, oh, you should try this or do this or change this rule. So we did that, and it was good. And then we would promote What the Film while we were there. And while we were at this conference, we're sitting at a table, and now keep in mind, I've been in the game business all of about, this started in October of 2017, and it was now like February of 2018. So I've been doing this for all of about 4 or 5 months.
Yeah.
And one of the guys at the table, he goes, so what are you going to do with What the Film after it's done on Kickstarter? And I just looked at him, I'm like, we're going to go get it into Target, of course. And he goes, it doesn't work like that. He's like, he worked for JVC. He goes, I work for JVC, and we invented the VCR, and it takes us like a year to get a meeting with Target. And
oh boy.
In my head, I was just like, challenge accepted. And so I went home that night, and I went online and I just started looking up, like, you know, how do I find a buyer for games, and I stumbled across some information. Like I'd find a buyer for like yogurt, and so I'd send him a message of like, hey, I understand you buy the yogurt for Target. I have a game that, you know, I think is perfect fit for Target. Do you know who I contact? And I just started like firing off all these messages. Yeah. Well, then I stumbled across a guy that, you know, his title was Toys and Games. I'm like, oh, okay, well, that's probably, maybe this is the guy. So I message him, and I said, you know, our game's on Kickstarter, it's funded, it's perfect for Target, you should take a look. So I get a message back from him, and he was just like, your game looks great. I think that was it. He's like, oh, thanks for the message, your game looks great. I'm like, are you the buyer for Target? And in the interim, like I looked up his info, and he ended up being the vice president for all of Toys and Games for Target Corporate. And I was like,
oh wow,
I found a good person. And so he messaged me back. He's like, no, he's like, I'll connect you with my buyer. Just email me. Here's my Target email address. Just shoot me an email in the morning, and I'll connect you with the buyer. So the next day, we were on the phone with the buyer. 2 weeks later, we flew out to Minneapolis, and they picked it up as a Target exclusive. So
wow.
I know it doesn't always, I know that's an anomaly, and I know that it doesn't always happen like that, but it did happen that way, and it does happen like that occasionally. So, you know, don't, I guess the takeaway is, you know, you never know unless you try. So.
Exactly, yep. Which brings me to my next question of, how does it feel when you walk into said Target and you see your game on the shelf and, you know, you see people walking around and they have it in their basket or whatever, and, you know, how does that make you feel?
Oh, I can't count the number of times that I would, like, go in and video our game on the shelf and just be like, hey, look. I'm sure people on, like, our Instagram feed were tired of it. Like, we know. It's
yes, we see it all the time.
We get it. But, yeah, no, it was exciting. And, you know, again, it was another one of those kind of, like, bucket list item, check, done. That was, it was very cool. It was cool to see it. And I wanted to, like, you know, I get crazy ideas. And I'm just like, maybe I should go put it in people's basket for them and, you know, like, help them with their choice. And Mike's like, you can't do that. Like, don't do that. Like, he's the voice of reason to my, you know, constant crazy ideas. He would always fear. I'd email him in the morning. I'm like, hey, late last night, I had this idea. He's like, what did you do? I'm like, oh, I emailed the vice president of Target at Toys and Games. And he's like, what?
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah.
That's still really cool.
And not all of them work out. I mean, I think, oh, my goodness. I think if I went back and counted or looked at how many people I've, like, tried to reach out to and message, you know, you get maybe 1 in 100 or so. But you know, I was constantly like, oh, yes, I sent an email to J-Lo last night, and, you know, asking her if she, you know, whatever. Like, it was endless. Like, poor Mike, he just constantly had to suffer through my, you know, like, who I was harassing the next day, and it was like, yeah.
So for your next game, what do you got coming up in development?
Ooh.
That's a good question. So we have a few that we're working on, and I don't know if, like, I can't really say, there's not really a whole lot that I can say, but, you know, we have kind of changed our, I know, I'm sorry. We have kind of changed our, not changed our focus, but kind of maybe, like, honed our focus to just, like, family-friendly games. You know, games that you would want to break out and play with your family. And, so that's kind of been the focus. And I know what the film doesn't scream like family-friendly title. And if we went back and, were to start over, would we name it something different? Maybe not. But it is a family-friendly game. You can play it with kids. It does say 12 plus on the box, but it's mostly just because I played it. I think my son was 9 when we first started testing this, and we would play it with him. And there's cards in there like you become the Mafia Don, and he's like, "What's a Mafia Don?
What is that?"
Like,
yeah.
What is a hit?
Pull another card. Exactly. Like just pull another card. So it's nothing inappropriate. It just might be over their heads. That's all.
Yeah, that's understandable.
But yeah, so just more family-friendly games that bring families together. That's kind of our focus. Is we want to create family-friendly games that bring families together.
That sounds like a good slogan to have, especially for a game company.
Thanks.
I mean, yeah.
I know, right? It does sound like a commercial.
Well, that was all of my questions. Nero, did you have any left over?
Maybe.
Maybe.
Let's see. I'm pretty sure I can come up with some questions if
Can
give me a little bit. Give me a couple more minutes, but.
I was going to say, since Graham and Alyssa have been quiet on the line, can we hop in?
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you guys have any questions?
So I actually have.
Oh, sorry. I didn't want to. I wasn't.
Myself.
I'm happy to go. I just didn't want to interrupt if Graham was going to start.
Oh no, go for it first.
Okay, sure. Yeah. So I really appreciated, Alex, that you talked a little bit about just your commitment, your drive to reaching out to anyone and everyone to get your game made, because I feel like filmmaking is very similar, right? Like if you want to make it happen, you have to be willing to ask for help and not give up. I'm also curious, because you've been through the Kickstarter process, and I know you guys did a lot to help that move. From the end of doing something like a crowdfunding, can you tell us a little more about what did you guys have to do in order to get your brand out there, to raise awareness, to bring in backers? I mean, how did that work for you guys?
So that's definitely, I think, one of the hardest parts of all of this, and is just getting that awareness and getting people's attention. And it for something like this, for games or for films, whichever the case may be, I mean, you really, really need to start your grassroots efforts much, much earlier than you start your Kickstarter. And you need to build your database, and you need to build your social media presence. And I know these are all kind of like the stock answers, but it's true. Like that's how you're gonna get the numbers that you need to be able to raise the funding that you want. And if you're not putting in the time and effort on Instagram or on other social media channels or YouTube, grow your YouTube following. Like find something that people want, so that they will want to follow you. And whether it's you're giving away coloring pages for based on what your movie's going to be about, or something free that you can give away, maybe digitally, to get people to sign up for your email. That's one of the most important things. And really, any effort for a Kickstarter campaign should start probably 4 to 6 months at least prior to the actual launch of your Kickstarter. And that was, I feel like, maybe a mistake that we made on our first one that we did not make on our second one, where we really kind of like worked on building the fan base and worked on building subscribers and things like that to, both our Facebook page and our Instagram page.
I'm just curious. So I know Ashley asked what's going on next with Lethal Chicken, but I can't help but wonder for you personally, and even for Mike, do you feel like now that things are really picking up with
game making that you guys are kind of walking away from doing production, or is that something you're still pursuing?
So I still pursue production, and so my production has kind of been all over the map. I started with corporate, and it's kind of mostly stayed in the corporate vein. The film shorts, and I did some music videos, and I had the One Too Many Mornings, but then it's kind of fallen back into corporate. But having I think it's cool having the experience of both of those sides, because I think it makes you more marketable to some of the larger companies. I think the world has changed a lot from when I first started in the production business, where you were very much one track. What you either write or you direct or you edit, and now you're expected to be able to kind of do all of them. And so getting experience in all of those areas across multiple disciplines will give you, I think, a better chance of surviving some of the ups and downs of being in the film industry, because it's not an easy industry to be in. I mean, I'm sure you guys know, you're constantly looking for, what's the next gig, what's the next project, and where's the next paycheck coming from. So, I think for me the answer has been just to be as diverse as possible, and ultimately as filmmakers we like to create, right? That's the bottom line. We like to create and tell stories, and things have become such a transmedia market where you can tell these stories in so many ways. It used to be just film or television, and now it's film or television or streaming, or there's so many different avenues to tell our stories and to create and get things out there. And we took a movie script and turned it into a board game. Is basically what ultimately is how that came about. So, no, I definitely have not turned away from production. I was going to say, I do have kind of just some interesting thoughts on the whole distribution process, because when our film, when One Too Many Mornings was at Sundance, it was there in 2010. Now, if you kind of look back at the economy back then, in 2008 is when things went south, and it lasted for about 4 years. So we were right in the middle of, at that time, what had been the worst recession in a long time. And so films were not getting bought. I had a buddy that had a movie in Sundance as well, and he wrote it, or he was the writer on it. But it had Adrian Brody. It was a movie called High School. I don't know if you guys ever heard of it or saw it, but it had Adrian Brody, but they spent like $10 million on this film, and they were in Sundance, with us as well. And they didn't get, a deal. Like, there were very, very few deals that got cut in 2010. And we were one of them. We didn't get a deal either, but kind of. Going in, we knew, Mike had kind of been tracking the, how the distribution deals were going for Sundance in 2008 and 2009. And so he had kind of already seen the writing on the wall. And so he went in thinking, we're probably not going to get a deal. We may get something theatrically, but he's like, let's do something different. And this was right when digital distribution was starting to make some noise, and YouTube was just getting big. So we made a deal with YouTube, and so it was these 5 or 6 films that were premiering on Sundance, and the idea was, hey, watch this Sundance premiere, an hour after it's premiered at Sundance. So when it was done at 8 o'clock on Friday night, people could go onto YouTube and watch our movie and rent it. They had to rent it though. But it was the first time YouTube offered any paid content ever. Was for our film and the other 5. I think there were 6 total, and the other 5. So that was the deal that we'd made. It was just it's instantly available. We're going for digital distribution, and we're going to put our film out there. And that was this is the wave of the future. And then people were like, no, it's not. And it was interesting because what we thought was an awesome idea ended up with like we got severe backlash from people, like people on YouTube, and they're just like, if this is how YouTube's going, and keep in mind, like, YouTube was pretty new, so they're like, if this is how YouTube's going, like, goodbye YouTube. Like, the comments are super negative, and there's a lot of them. There's like, I'm not paying for content on YouTube. If this is the way YouTube's going to go, then I'm out of here. Goodbye YouTube. It was nice to know you while you lasted. Good luck. It's just like super, super negative stuff about YouTube charging for content. And so that was one, like a lesson learned on distribution. But you don't know until you try, And if we could go back and redo that same thing, I think we would make the same choices again. And even though it didn't play out, sometimes things work out and sometimes they don't. And that was a scenario where our timing was, maybe we're a bit too early. We're on it, and now there's paid content on there all over the place, and no one seems to care. But when being the first was definitely not the best for us in that scenario. And I've always thought that just kind of a fascinating case study on YouTube and just how things have progressed. If you look back, this was only 10 years ago. It wasn't that long ago.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah, YouTube was relatively pretty new that time. Sorry,
you're fine.
You keep getting cut off.
So
Go,
this
Greg.
kind of
Graham,
ties,
just say it.
So this kind of ties into what you were saying. With the world changing, and especially right now, and I don't know if you've thought about this or not, digitalizing your game, because a lot of games are, like popular board games, are being digitalized. Has that ever come to mind for you?
Yeah. It has. It has, and that's something that probably should be our next step. We haven't done it yet, but yes, I think it's a great idea. I'm not sure. I haven't looked super deeply into it, but if there's a way to turn the game digital and then eventually monetize it, I think that's awesome. I think that's great. And if you look at like the music industry, like everyone's like, oh, taking your music digitally, like it's gonna, everyone's gonna steal our music and we're not going to make any more money, which maybe there's some truth to that. But, I think the industry's figured out how to make it so that it works and musicians do make money off of, creating music.
Right.
And I'm sure it's the same with games. So, yes, I would definitely look at that. And thank you for that question, because that will probably spark us to start looking at that a little further.
Any other questions that we have for Alex? Or Alex, likewise, do you have any questions for us? Maybe just one question, though.
No, I think we've covered an awesome range of topics. What's next for you guys? I guess that's maybe the next question. What's next for you guys?
I think Alyssa has the answer to that.
Yeah,
Oh.
Alyssa, you want to take that?
Well, so for sure, the next thing for us is going to be playing this game. That's the next thing we're going to be doing on the podcast. But
That's the right answer.
Yeah, that is the right answer.
It is literally in the mail. It is on its way to my apartment. We will be playing it soon, I promise.
Awesome. That's a fun game. I think you guys will have a fun time. It's good.
I think we'll enjoy it a lot. And
You should definitely listen in when we do.
Oh,
okay,
yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that'd be awesome.
And then we're also, Arizona Studios is mostly a corporate commercial video company, but the members of our staff all do independent filmmaking. So we are working on an independent short film project right now that we're in progress for. So fingers crossed, we'll see how that goes.
Awesome.
Woo.
Oh, that's very cool.
Yeah.
Well, very cool.
Fun.
Well, our games are available on Amazon. You can find them on there. You can search for those. And here's one last thing that I find interesting. So I know I mentioned briefly that I do kind of I did an after-school arts program teaching kids sculpting and drawing. We've actually taken that program online, and I do try and support games and even filmmakers if there's kind of like, fun kid-related film characters that you would want drawn. Like right now next week we're drawing a game that's currently on Kickstarter by YouTuber Alex Clark. And we're getting ready
Alex Clark. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So we're doing. So he has a game called Sugar Heist on Kickstarter right now, and we are drawing his characters next week. as part of
Oh,
our
very nice.
after school, or our online art program now. It's not really after school anymore, but our online art program called Watch Me Draw. So yes, for Watch Me Draw.
Cool.
So if anybody out there has a game or a movie that they want us to teach kids how to draw their characters, it does, it's great cross promotion. It's great for, to introduce kids to a new game or, a movie that they might be interested in. It also gives us kind of fun new characters to draw, so it's not just, the same, like, let's draw an elephant again.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's
sounds
been
like
fun. And
I'm
that's
sorry.
kind of one of our current projects that we're doing.
Where do people go to find that your
So
organization?
they can go to watchmedraw.com, and it's just like it sounds, watchmedraw.com.
Alex, thank you so much again for your time. Is there anything else that you need from us before we let you go?
I don't think so. I think that pretty much covers it. So thank you again for having me on your show. It's awesome.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much. I mean, I can't tell you how much it means to us that you took the time. I mean, we're really excited to play your game and to find out that you're a filmmaker made it even more fascinating and exciting for us. So we appreciate it.
Awesome. And corporate video. I do kind of the same stuff you guys do too.
Yeah,
so,
that's true. You understand our world.
Yeah, exactly. You got to keep lots of plates spinning, that's for sure.
Kindred
Like
spirits.
this was meant to be. Yep.
I know, right? Awesome. Well, thank you again, and I look forward to hearing the broadcast of this.
For sure.
Yeah,
I'll
can't
make
wait.
sure to send you all the links.
Sounds great. All right. Thanks
All
so
right,
much.
take care.
Have a good one.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening, and you will catch us next time, or you'll hear us next time. Sorry, that's the appropriate one. See you later.
Wait, you mean hear us later?
Hear us later. I don't know.
Oh, God.
Oh, gosh.